All right, Mr. Chair, the YouTube is live, so whenever you'd like to start with the opening remarks, please do so.
Okay. Good afternoon. In accordance with sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to several properties to create new lots. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Committee of Adjustment public hearings are now conducted in a hybrid in-person and virtual format. Some applicants and participants and even panel members will make their submissions in person, and others will participate virtually by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform. The meeting is also streamed on Toronto City Planning YouTube channel, and anyone wishing to view the hearing may watch on YouTube. Those who want to participate virtually and have registered in advance will be connecting with their computer, tablet, smartphone, or telephone, and have the option of participating via video or add audio only. All virtual participants will automatically be muted on entry, and when your item is called, you will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. We also ask that you mute your devices until you're called on to speak. Those participating by video appearance will be temporarily upgraded to panelists when your item is being held. During this time, your camera will be enabled. You will only be visible during your 5-minute allotted speaking time, and at all other times, your video will be disabled and you will be reinstated as an attendee. For both in-person and virtual participants, Committee of Adjustment staff will share presentations submitted in accordance with the written submission deadline. Those participating through WebEx are not allowed to use the share screen or any other panelist controls during a video appearance. The host will remove you from the panelist role if you fail to respect this instruction. Receiving a copy of the decision of the committee. People attending in person today who want to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must fill out a decision request card, and those participating virtually need to submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and your email address, because the Committee of Adjustment and the Toronto Local Appeal Body, in the event of an appeal, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you do not agree with the decision of the committee rendered here today, you may be able to appeal the decision to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or in some limited circumstances to the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, the provincial government in November 2022 amended the Planning Act and generally removed rights of third parties to appeal Committee of Adjustment decisions. Only the applicant, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, specified persons and public bodies, as those terms are defined in the Planning Act, are permitted to appeal decisions of the Committee of Adjustment. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure will be in the hybrid model will go in order, in the order listed in the agenda. Starting at item 20, we only have 5 applications here today. In making submissions, when an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant may proceed with a presentation if they desire. What the committee does not require presentation, applicants are to advise the chair should they wish to speak to the committee. The committee may ask questions and then take the matter into the committee for decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum 5 minutes to address the committee, and the clock is up on the screen, and you will be cautioned when you're approaching or have exceeded the 5-minute mark to kindly wrap up. Any presentation materials or other materials you may wish to submit to the committee must have been emailed in advance of the hearing. Staff and committee members cannot accept materials at the hearing. When addressing the committee, please clearly start off by stating your name and address, and please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined in the application, i.e. planning matters, not drainage or construction or landlord and tenant issues. The applicant or agent goes first on a contested matter, and when a contested, it just means there's just people in making deputations. Doesn't mean that there aren't opposition letters, but when there are more than one person speaking, the applicant or their agent goes first, makes their presentation. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions made to proposals at the hearing today. The committee may decide to defer the application if being substantially revised in order to ensure that the revised application is accurate and that all those who are entitled to notice of the application have been informed of the changes. Then individuals, either in support or opposed to the application, will be invited to speak. Generally, first call on speakers in the hearing room and then those participating via WebEx. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they finish their presentation. And when all other speakers have finished, the applicant or their agent is given an opportunity to answer only those questions or rebut those issues that were raised by the speakers, not to introduce new information. That will then mark the end of the discussion, and the application is then taken into committee for a decision. Are there any declarations of interest of panel or staff on the items before us this afternoon? Okay, I'm declaring a conflict or a declaration of interest in item number 21 of the abundance of caution, 10 Trillium Terrace. One of the registered neighbors to speak was a law school classmate of mine many years ago, but I'll declare that conflict. And any file, okay, deferrals. I believe we had in the planning memo, item number 20, the first one this afternoon. There is a request in the community planning memo listing the consolidated request for deferrals in today's hearing. That was included for item reason number 2, which I believe is they need more information, more time to review the application. And the speaker on this application is Dale Terrio. So let's hear from Dale on the matter of the deferral.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Dale Terrio. I'm with Trenton Drafting and Design. I am the agent for this application.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
So your application appears on the consolidated memo. I don't know what they, are you aware that community planning wants this matter deferred?
Absolutely, yeah. I have spoken with planning and
okay.
we have resolved a couple of things. So I've given them some new drawings. So I agree with the deferral. If we could have it set to the next available meeting, that would be fantastic.
Okay, the next available meeting is, I believe, September 14th. We'll have to hear from Barb Bartosik, manager, the deputy secretary treasurer, if that date is available.
No, Mr. Chair, any dates, like that's way too soon. We've already mailed for all our September hearing dates. So when they're ready, they would contact our office, and that's when we'll schedule them for the next available date at that time.
Right, in order for the revised notice to be sent out. So, right, it's impossible to first of all, you're not going to make September, as you've just heard, because agendas have been mailed and the materials. And we don't know when you're going to be ready. So when you're ready, you contact staff, and then they put you on the next available agenda in order to provide time for the notices to be circulated to neighbors, et cetera, and other city departments. Okay, so
of course,
deferred sort of sine die. When you're ready, you contact staff, and they'll put you back on.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Just hang on. We're not done with it yet.
Yep.
So members, we need a vote to have this matter deferred.
I'm happy to make that motion for deferral.
Mr. Chair and members, before we do that, maybe we should ask if there's anyone in the crowd that wants to speak to this item.
Is there anyone in the crowd that would like to speak to this item?
Is there a crowd? Yeah.
Any one of the 4 people in the audience that would like to speak to the item, or 5, sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
It's like I was going to say, I'm virtual, and I promise I'm going to be there for the next meeting in person. I just concluded a move, so it was difficult to get back. But I was going to say, is there a crowd in the room?
There's 5 people.
So only 4 people. Okay. So no one in the room. So can we have a motion to defer, please?
Yeah, based on number 2, in order to provide adequate time for staff to appropriately review the application and discuss any concerns, I move for deferral.
Okay. Seconder for that. Mr. Taylor, thank you. All in favor? Or Ms. McCluskey, it doesn't really matter. All in favor, it's unanimous. The matter is deferred. And so the next item, which I'll do the introduction and then I'll make my leave. It's 10
No,
Trillium
no,
Terrace.
if you've declared an interest,
Oh.
someone else will have to take over. And if you can turn off your video.
Okay, I will.
So
Can
Mr.
I keep my
Kumar,
audio?
yep, you can listen.
Otherwise, you can give me a call. I'll just turn my. Okay.
Mr. Kumar,
Yep,
can you
sorry.
take over as chair?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Secretary Treasurer. So item 21 is an application to construct a second-story addition above the existing dwelling, a two-story front and a north side addition, and a new front porch. Planning has a condition of requesting it being tied to plans, and I believe that's all that we have. There are 10 variances being sought.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, committee members, Addison Milne Price, planner at Design Plan Services located at 900 East Mall, Suite 300, here on behalf of the owner. I'll begin with the presentation then. This application was originally deferred just to discuss with planning staff. There is a revised set of variances that's before you now as part of this application, but I'll point out that the plans before you have not been altered. Instead, the variances were revised through a re-review of the zoning notice, and all of these variances that are new were triggered by the fact that the existing building crosses a stable top of slope. I'll note that the TRCA has reviewed these plans and has indicated that they have no objections to any of the variances sought. And as noted, planning staff has also issued a report confirming that they do not object to the proposal. Several letters of support have also been submitted by adjacent neighbors. Now, variance 1 pertains to the proposed FSI. The proposed FSI is not calculated based on the entire lot area. I'm sure committee is familiar with this scenario. Instead, the lot that is below the stable top of bank is not included in the lot area for the purposes of calculating the FSI, and therefore the FSI is inflated. The FSI is also further inflated by the inclusion of the basement in the FSI calculation. Due to the steep slopes on the lot, the basement's considered the first floor and is therefore included in the total amount of FSI, despite the majority of the basement being located below ground level. If the proposed building had its FSI calculated in a standard fashion, it would be calculated at approximately 0.52. Given that the purpose of the FSI provision is to regulate the overall massing of buildings, the proposed massing, when the foregoing factors are considered, is very similar to the massing of surrounding buildings and is only a minor difference from what's permitted as of right. Now, variance 2 pertains to the front yard setback. I'll note the property is a corner lot, and therefore the requirement for front yard setback is based on the front yard setback of the adjacent dwelling. But since the subject property has an irregular shape with a front line on a sharp angle, the requirement for the front yard setback is also on a sharp angle relative to the dwelling. The site plan illustrates this. As such, the dwelling is only non-compliant with the front yard setback for only a very small portion in the southeast corner. Most importantly, this portion of the dwelling is already existing, and none of the proposed new additions will cross the existing front yard setback. Now, variance 3 pertains to the rear yard setback, and this is also an existing condition on the subject property. None of the proposed additions are proposed to cross the existing rear yard setback or be closer to the rear yard lot line. Now, variance 4, which pertains to the maximum building length, is minimized by the fact that no portion of the new addition extends beyond the front yard setback or rear yard setback as currently proposed. The proposed length is also entirely a result of the new addition, and moreover does not extend as far as the current rear main wall, nor does the new addition extend the full width of the front main wall, and this makes the impact of the variance quite minimal compared to the delta of the variance requested. Now, variances 5, 6, and 7 all pertain to provisions that are related to the stable top of bank or top of slope. In general, a 10-meter setback is required from all stable top of slopes, and only limited construction is permitted below them. In this case, while there is construction proposed beyond the stable top of slope, all of this construction is proposed on top of an existing first floor. I'll reiterate that neither RNFP nor the TRCA have any objections to the proposed variances. We've been working closely with the TRCA on this development for several years, and I'll note that regardless of the decision of the COA today, the TRCA must issue a permit prior to any development taking place on this property. Now, with regard to variance 8, along TRILLIUM Terrace, most of the main pedestrian entrances are accessed by stairs. There is a steep topography on the site, which is part of the reason for the stairs being required. I'll note that the proposed entrance height represents a difference of half a meter, or approximately just 3 risers from what's permitted as of right, which will be almost imperceptible from an as of right staircase. Now, I'll quickly note on variance 9, the dwelling is compliant with the overall height requirements, and variance 10 is a technical variance due to the first floor being considered a second floor.
Thank you. Any questions from members? Anyone in the audience to speak to this item?
Mr. Chair, there are 2 speakers on the line.
Okay. Sorry, you don't have a speakers list here.
It's all right. First one is Darlene Madat, and I'll go ahead and unmute them now.
Thank you. Welcome.
All right, Darlene, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
For hearing me. I'm Darlene Madot, 21 Stonegate Road in Etobicoke. I've lived in the neighborhood for some 32 years, and I know the subject owners. I'm wholly supporting their application. They are very respectful of matters of ecology and the environs. And I know they have, I knew the mother of Susie, the current owner, one of the current owners, and she owned the property for many years. So what I've said in my written submissions and basically doesn't need to be repeated, other than that, that I know this has been a dream of the property owners to remain in the neighborhood that is in effect almost ancestral. I can only imagine that their plans are proceeding with utmost respect for all considerations, and including their neighbors. I'm not troubled at all by the renovations that are contemplated, additional heights, noise impacts, although that's not a concern, I don't think, for this committee. But I wholly support the application. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone have any questions? Okay, we have another speaker.
Mr. Chair, we do have one more speaker, Ms. Shauna Gallagher. I'll go ahead and unmute them now.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm at 23 Stonegate Road. We've been here since 1995.
Could you state your name for the record as well?
Oh, sorry, Sean Gallagher. And I've never done anything like this before, so I don't really know what the ins and outs are. I was just interested in the dates of construction and any noise. And I am impressed with the plans and the amount of work that's gone into it. So I trust that it will all be handled really well. So thank you.
Thank you for expressing your support.
Mr. Chair, that concludes our virtual participants.
Okay, I don't think we need a rebuttal because there was really no issues raised. So I'll leave it to the members if they have any questions or if someone wants to do a motion. Mishi?
Yeah, sure. I'm prepared to make a motion. I find that the application meets the 4 tests. I'll move to approve the application subject to planning condition to tie to the site plan.
Do we have a seconder?
Yes, I'll second that. Sorry.
All in favor? Okay, it's approved unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Clark?
Just to confirm with who we have in the room, is there anyone here in person to speak for 58 Antioch Drive? No. 21 Gort Avenue? Yep. And then 16 Highgate Road. Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, we're ready for item 22, 58 Antioch Drive.
Okay, 58 Antioch Drive is an application to construct a one-story addition above the existing dwelling and a new two-story rear addition above the existing dwelling. Okay, it's a two-story rear addition. I don't know how it can be above the existing dwelling, but perhaps we can discuss that after the introduction. There are 6 variances. We have a planning report for information. We have cover letters from both the owner and the architect. We have an explanation of the revisions. And we have 2 letters of opposition from both adjacent neighbors who are both either here. I will be represented on this application. Okay, and we also have the materials from the previous hearing. This matter was deferred from the July 6, 2023 hearing. And we have 3 speakers. We have Ben Dominguez, the agent for the applicant, as well as the Rick Sontag speaking, representing the neighborhood 56, and the area resident, Mr. Lukovic at 60 Antioch. So let's hear first from Mr. Dominguez.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Ben Domingos, and my address is 133 Evans Avenue in Toronto. I'm representing the owners at 58 Antioch Drive.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we should get a presentation from you.
Okay, so the original application on July the 6th asked for 8 variances, and there were a few letters of objection leading up to that hearing. So the owners decided that, as a courtesy to the neighbors, that we would defer at that time to take some time to look at their concerns, make revisions to drawings, even though at that time we actually had a positive report from the planning department. Concerns from neighbors was building height and massing. And as a response to these issues, the newly revised design you have before you now, we've reduced the building height. Originally, it was at 10.41 meters, and we reduced it down to 9.495, which is below the maximum allowable height of 9.5 meters. So no longer a variance requirement for maximum height. We also reduced floor to ceiling heights on the second floor. This reduced the exterior wall height down to below 7 meters. And this also eliminated another variance for maximum wall height. So basically, all the dimensions in terms of the massing of the building now in a vertical sense are now considered as of right. No variances are required. So we've reduced the number of variances from 8 to 6. With regards to the floor space index issue, which was an issue with neighbors, it comes in pretty high at 0.69 D. And some neighbors were concerned this was a 3-story, and it's not. The owners clarified this issue with several neighbors that were not aware that the basement is included in the area calculation. And the area of the house, excluding the basement, actually comes in at 0.51 D. And this was confirmed by city planning in their report, which stated, city planning staff note the floor space index is technical in nature because the basement, which has a significant grade change at the rear, is included in the calculation. Floor space index excluding the basement would be approximately 0.1 D, which is in keeping with the character and past committee of adjustment decisions in the surrounding neighborhood. there have been at least 11 other recent Committee of Adjustment applications for additions in the neighborhood, well in excess of the 0.51D, which I include in my report in detail and photographs. Some of them in excess of 0.6, in fact. So there was also some concern privacy. And it's important to note that these are very wide lots. This is not a downtown Toronto situation. It's about 5 meters between homes. And the windows that are designed within the elevations are well within the allowable aggregate area of unprotected glazed openings as per the OBC. Despite this, however, the owners did eliminate some windows. They reduced the size of all the windows on the second story in response to the concerns from the neighbors. But still with that, one of the neighbors contacted directly about privacy issues.
Sir, you're cutting out.
In response to this. Sorry. Can you hear me now? You hear me now?
Keep going, but you were cutting. We were able to follow, but just keep going. Now it seems better. I don't know what you did.
Okay. All right. So in response to the owners, we once again reconfigured a couple of windows, and we resubmitted some drawings based on the concerns of one of the neighbors to the north. I also submitted photos along with it so that the city planning department could see the existing conditions. Yep. Their response to that was, thank you for attaching the photos and revised plans for our review. The photos are very helpful in visualizing the impact on the neighbor at 60 Antioch. And we believe the reconfiguration of the rear windows is sufficient to address the privacy concerns. Other variances 2, 3, 5, and 6 are all based on existing conditions. Variance 4 is basically building a new balcony where there was a roof deck that existed, which is a little bit larger than the 4 square meters. In closing, I see 20 seconds. So again, I just wanted to say that owners defer the application as a courtesy in order to respond to all the neighbors' collective issues, in which we did. We worked with them as much as we could, to the neighbors who were willing to work with us. And I guess we're going to hear from them next, and I'm here ready for questions.
Okay. You'll also have a chance to respond after they've made their submissions. But yeah, it's all quite clearly explained in the staff report, which has given us a report for information. And you quoted from it extensively regarding the fact that they feel the changes have mitigated potential privacy concerns and the fact that the basement is included. So very nice of you to defer for 5 to 6 weeks to putting you behind schedule in terms of just to make your neighbors feel more at ease. So let's hear from those neighbors. And in the meantime, unless someone has any questions for now at this point for Mr. Domingos.
Quick question, if I may. I'm trying to find where the second platform is. I see the one off the kitchen, but where's the second balcony?
The second balcony is actually the front porch.
Front, yeah.
Is the front porch?
We're rebuilding the front porch.
So the front porch is being considered
a balcony.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably because the basement's out of the ground, so it's just a technical thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
I kept trying to find this other
Great.
balcony.
So
got it.
okay, so now our next speaker is Rick Sontag, representing the area residents at 56, who I think have the same last name, so he'll explain. Welcome, Mr. Sontag. We have your letter as well.
Excellent, excellent. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Rick Sontag. I'm representing my parents, Jürgen and Elsa Sontag, at 56 Antioch Drive. For starters, my parents have no issues with the front elevation or the design of the house. In fact, they find it very tastefully done, and they find the neighbors actually very pleasant. Their issue revolves solely around privacy. Over the years, I mean, they used to live down at, I'm trying to think of the number now, but they had a back, they weren't on the ravine previously, but they were very attracted to the ravine because it would offer them that privacy and the view, etc. So over the years, they've invested a lot of time and money to ensure their privacy in their backyard. Their concern, first of all, is with the amount of windows on the side of the house looking directly into the backyard. They would prefer if the amount of windows could be kept to an average consistent with the street. Secondly, they don't mind the proposal of the extension of the house towards the ravine. Their concern is more with the second story on top of that, which again would be peering directly into the backyard. So again, this is all about privacy. That's all their concerns. They're not worried about the design or of the house. They just want to make sure that when they spend a lot of time in their backyard, and they just want to ensure that when they're back there, you know, that it's just them and not people looking into the backyard. You know, as nice as they might be, they're not trying to rock the boat or anything, but they just want that respected. And that's simply it.
Okay. Mr. Sontag, did you get a chance to read the community planning report for information report dated August 18th, which our friend Mr. Ben Dominguez just referred to, and he feel that the planning staff mentioned in their report that they feel that they've mitigated those privacy concerns. You know, nothing's perfect. They're on a ravine, but everyone has neighbors. Anyone can look back. Maybe people don't look back, but the opinion of the community planning is that they have mentioned that. So are you aware of those changes, correct? From the
yes,
original
I am aware of it. And basically, we've seen it, and I have to speak on behalf of my parents. So again, you know, they're elderly. They've looked at it. We've looked at it. And our concern is still that with the side windows, it's just the positioning of them. When the second story addition is put on top of that extension in the back, it'll still be looking directly into the backyard. Like, they don't care if there's windows, if floor to ceiling windows looking towards the back. I mean, they're entitled to that. They want to have the view. They just want to maintain their privacy. That's all.
Don't blame them. You're a good son. So we'll hear from Mr. Dominguez and Airbus. So that's your main concern at the issue. The windows still remain.
Yes, that's my parents' main concern.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Members, any questions for Mr. Sontag?
Just a quick question. Sir, did you say your parents lived at 56 Antioch Drive?
Yes, 56.
It looks like there's two doorways at the front. Is that a semi-detached house or is that a single detached? Looks like there's two entryways.
No, it's a single. It's single. Yeah, there's a front door. There's a front door, side door to get into the house, and then there's an entry through the garage.
Yeah, it just looks like, okay. It's all right. I just had that.
Yeah.
I was just curious, that's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so if no one else has any questions for Mr. Sontag at 56, let's hear from Borislav Lukovic at 60, the neighbor on the other side.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Borislav Lukovic, and I live at 60 Antioch Drive.
Okay, let us know what your concerns are, if any.
Well, I explained my concerns in the letter of objection, and I'll try to explain a little bit better now, and we can go from there. First, I would like to thank the committee for allowing my voice to be heard and for the opportunity to contribute to this process. We have lived at 60 Antioch Drive since 1998. We raised our children in this wonderful neighborhood and look forward to enjoying it with our grandkids. We were happy to hear that a young family was moving next door. However, we had concerns with their proposed construction project. So the major concern is two-story addition over the existing one-story extension in the back. This extension was built by the previous owner 20 years ago. We were there. There is a provision in the bylaw that allows a one-story extension beyond the permitted maximum building length, provided that the height is limited to 5 meters. It is one story and no wider than 50% of the building width. The writers of the bylaw had certainly carefully considered the impact of the extensions on the neighboring properties, and the variance was not required. Now, the applicant applied for altering dwelling length to 18 meters in an attempt to subvert the provision I just explained. So basically, we asked committee to carefully consider the implication it would set a precedent, essentially allowing for avoidance of the height limit restriction by asking for a length variance. The length variance doesn't look much, it is only 1 meter, but the impact on the wall height is significant. The wall height will be more than 8 meters from the ground because the back wall is completely open. I explained this concern in one meeting that we had with our neighbor Munaz, but unfortunately there was no concession in this regard. And now I want to mention that the Ben's comment about changing the windows inside, I think that there was a huge miscommunication. There was no direct communication with us. It was going through the community planning, and they changed the windows on the wrong side of the house. Anyway, now to address the floor space index controversy, at least in my view, community planning posted the information report, and the application review section of that report contains the claim that the basement is included in the calculation and that the FSI is in fact 0.51. I strongly disagree with that statement, as the house does not have basement. The bottom floor is above ground, both in front and behind the house, and at no point does it meet the bylaw definition of a basement. Both the zoning examiner and the architect are aware of that. We can argue whether the FSI is a fair metric or not, but the current bylaw defines FSI as a metric to use. Also, the final decision will contain the variances as specified, in other words, 0.69, not 0.51. So in case this application gets approved, the next application will ask for 0.75 and use the fact that 69 was previously approved. Each new house will be bigger than the next. The architect used the same approach for this application. He listed the FSIs in the previously approved applications and is asking for a bit more. But he did not mention which of the listed applications were approved based on the exclusion of the non-basement floor in the calculation of FSI. I would also want to say a few words about the whole process. This has been a very frustrating experience for both our neighbors, the architect, as they expressed in their letters, but also for us. We expected open and honest discussion about the plans, but all we got was a vague information about the changes. Details of the plans were not shared openly with us, but we had to find them once they were posted on City Planning and Development site. The changes were discussed with community planning only, and I can understand why, based on the favorable information report. I also noticed that documents were posted and then removed from the application file. Then there was an omission of relevant data. For example, TRCA floor space index, which is 0.74, is omitted from the latest plans. The notice sign is not very helpful. I think it would be preferable if it contained a sketch of the proposed changes, similar to how the notice looks for the new buildings in Toronto. Then the neighbors and passerbys could see at a glance what is being proposed and how that will look in relationship to the neighborhood. Finally, we understand that families need room to grow and would not object to one floor addition over the original footprint of the house. However, we strongly object to the two-story addition on top of the existing one-story extension. And if this can be partially excluded from approving the application, we would really support that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that very articulate presentation to us. There's just one thing I mentioned. You said there's no basement. So as you I'm sure are aware, if it's more than 50% out of the ground, it counts towards GFA. I've never really heard anyone come here and say it's not a basement. It's the lowest level and it's in the ground. So do you know how close it is to being 50%? Like, you know, is it 80% out of the ground? Is it 52% out of the ground? Like,
Well,
I hear your argument that what you're saying is that it's unfair for something that's more than 50% out of the ground, for it to be called a basement and not really count and say, oh, it counts, but it doesn't count. You have to ignore it because it's the basement. So my question to you, though, and maybe Mr. Dominguez is better to answer, I'd like to know what percentage. Is it just slightly, like 51, 52, or is it like only slightly in the ground, more supporting your argument?
well, I can answer that, and you can actually read it in the letter by architect. He actually explained it very well. He said that in order to meet the definition of a basement, the midpoint of the height of the floor has to be below the established grade. And in these 14 houses on this side of the street, none of the house has this ground floor below that 50%. I'm not saying it's a much, and as I said, we will be supporting building a floor on top of the existing footprint, the old footprint of the house. We are really just concerned about the second story on the extension.
Okay, sir, you answered my question. I don't want you to go through the whole thing again.
Okay.
But what you're saying to me, so you're not saying it's like every other, more or less, maybe it's 52, 55. It's not like it's 80, 90% out of the ground. When you said there is no basement, I you know, and sort of made that argument that it should count. I just wanted to know how legitimate is that argument if it was just slightly technically below ground, but it sounds to me, and we'll hear from Mr. Dominguez what it is. So you're making sort of a new argument I've never heard from anyone that tries to argue that the basement level being the lowest level and is 50% the established grade is out of the ground, but maybe not too much more. So I just wanted to try to clarify what you were saying. So we'll hear from Mr. Dominguez on that. Thanks. Anyone else have any questions for the neighbor at number 60? No? Okay, so let's have Mr. Dominguez do his rebuttal. And in that rebuttal, sir, you can just mention how much to answer my question.
So the basement definition, as updated in the zoning bylaw in December of 2022, very recently actually, basement means any part of a building where the elevation of the midpoint between the lowest part of a floor and the bottom of the joists directly above it is lower than the elevation of a established grade in the residential zone category.
Okay.
So what that means in this particular case, the established grade comes in at 147.15. That's the elevation grade.
Okay, you know what? You're going into too much detail for me. The 50%, is it 52% or is it 80% out of the ground?
What?
That's all I want to know.
Above the ground?
Yes.
Oh, it's less than that.
Right. It's just slightly over the 50-50 rule to get you into that category, correct?
It's definitely a basement.
Okay.
It's a basement. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
You're confusing me at this time of the day. How many meters? I don't want to calculate. I just want to make sure that it's not based on what we've heard from Mr. The neighbor next door. Sorry, Mr. Lukovic, that it's not really only 20% in the ground or something bizarre, because I've never heard anyone make that argument. So I thought, you know, maybe there's something to it. It's a
finish
basement.
this one last thought there?
Yeah.
Because this is why the community planning or city planning is calling this a technical FSI.
Yes.
Because the difference between the midpoint of the basement and the established grade is less than 4 inches.
Okay. So
all he has to do is lower the basement by a few inches, and we're not even talking about this.
Okay. I just wanted, like I said, for the third time, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something bizarre where you're only 25% in the ground. And then he's right in saying there really is no basement. So there is a basement. That's all I was trying to get at. Thanks. Okay, I'll let you put your clock back at 5 minutes and you can do your rebuttal. Thank you.
Or the other things that he was talking about. Well, so basically that was one of the points I wanted to say is the adjacent grade, if you raise it by 4 inches on one side, it's a basement. If you lower the basement by 4 inches, it's a basement. He was mentioning the existing addition that was built 20 years ago. It was built actually under a different bylaw. It was called the, I'm old enough to remember this now, it's the Etobicoke zoning code is what it used to be called. And what was allowed then was building depth of 16.5 meters plus 1.8, which put the back of the building at approximately 18 meters. And that's what the existing back addition is at.
Okay.
The new variance actually allows me to extend it further into the backyard to 19 meters, which I could have done. But the reason we didn't do it is we wanted to build over top of the existing walls for construction costs to keep the costs down and build straight up. But we could have actually extended it out further, which would have been would create the privacy concerns that the neighbors have would be worse, I would think, because we could actually extend the building further. So we're actually building on this existing footprint. We're not extending, we're building on the footprint and filling in that back portion. I think that was really, and in terms of the privacy, I'm not sure what he was talking about. The windows were not the right windows, and I missed that part about the privacy concerns. I know that I worked with community planning on this, and they were satisfied with all the privacy concerns that he had regarding the rear balcony and windows and so on. So I have to say about that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, follow-up questions, committee members for either Mr. Dominguez or either the two neighbors who spoke, or is someone ready for a motion?
I guess I have a question for the last neighbor. I believe the statement was made, he's not opposed to another floor being put on the ground floor, but he's opposed to 2 floors being put on. So are you implying that this is going to be a 3-story house because you don't consider the ground to be a basement?
Well, I realized that by listening to today's arguments in the Committee of Adjustment, I didn't really understand the whole process. Is that, and I agree that FSI is probably just very technical thing, but it was the chair said that it's only 50% or 51%, so why bother? So we can use the same argument for any other variance, like if it's a 1 meter on 17 meters, it's not that much. So the height and the size of the building was not that of a big concern. The big concern for us was the height of this extension, which is something that I presented in the letter of objection, and I draw the lines where how it will look from our backyard. And there are some other houses on the same street, on the same side, that made this extension, and they have up to 1 floor, right? But this would be really, really high and very obviously very close to our backyard. And that's the concern. But the concession that was given for that was changing the windows, which was basically never asked for.
I'm trying to see where there's a height variance. There's no height variance being sought here. So they can build to the height that they're proposing without a variance.
Of course, and that's why I explained that this is the reason for that is because they ask for the length extension. If the second, okay.
But if you're
so if the building length is at 17 meters, then the height of the extension cannot be more than 5 meters. if the building length is more than 17 meters, they have to apply to committee to get approval for that. Once they get approval
For the length, but not for the
longer than
height.
70 meters, they can build any height. That's what I'm saying.
They can't build any height. There's still a height restriction. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, or can we take it into committee for a decision?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't see any negative impacts coming from any of these variances. I think the floor space index, while it looks extreme, that's because of the technicality of the grading of the land. It's really a 0.52 times FSI, which to me is not problematic. The other variances are very minor, 1 meter extension to the dwelling length. Couple of platforms which are a little bit bigger than permitted, but all in all, I'm satisfied the application meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act. And I move approval subject to urban forestry condition 2.
Thank you, sir. Seconder for that motion.
I'll second.
Nishi McCluskey, thank you. All in favor? It's unanimous. You have your approval. Thank you to Mr. Sontag and Mr. Lukovic for your participation, and the application has been approved. So our next application is 21 GORT Avenue. It's an application to construct a new detached dwelling within a new detached garage. There are 5 variances. And we have, this matter was originally deferred from the June 9th, 2022 hearing, so it's been over a year. We have all kinds of supporting materials, site plan, presentation. We have the arborist report, and I think another arborist report, and we have comments from forestry. They're looking for conditions 1, 2, and a refusal. So we have a standalone memo from forestry about this. We have transportation and Metrolinks, and we have all the materials from the previous hearing. And I think, transportation would like some conditions of approval.
I just wanted to mention that it was deferred from July this year, from a few months ago, not a year ago.
If you could just state
your
name and address.
Sorry. My name is Julie Lewis. The address is 21 GORT Ave. I'm the homeowner.
Okay, yeah, it said on my agenda list that it was deferred from June 9th, 2022. So was there a hearing was it up one more time that we don't have notice?
It was, our first hearing was July 6th, and we were deferred at that time. There was no prior, date.
Yeah, I see it says June 26, 2023. Right?
July 6, 2023 was our initial hearing date.
Okay. Oh, it was mailed on June 26th. You're right. Sorry.
July
That's correct.
6th?
We have it in our materials. So we'll just correct that. It wasn't, so it was July 6th, not June 9, 2022, but in fact 2023. So it hasn't been that long.
No.
Okay. So can you bring us up to date as to why it was deferred and what's changed, if anything, since then?
So it was deferred. There was some revisions that we had done prior that did not seem to get submitted properly. So we were deferred in order to work through those revisions. Since that hearing, we've worked to satisfy city, urban forestry, as well as work with neighbors, which one of our neighbors had a concern initially that we've resolved. Through doing so, we have reduced the number of variances from 8 to 5. And I provided a bit of a presentation.
Yeah, we have that.
You've got that? I would like to refer to that a little bit if you guys want to pull that up.
Yeah. Can we pull that up? That's the presentation. I see you did have, you're presenting in person, but you did have Tony Valentin, I guess, is your agent.
He is our architect, yeah. So
right, so you have these very well, yeah, we can get a beautiful presentation. I noticed when I went through this.
Okay.
I love render.
I'm just going to go through.
So go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm aware of my time, so I'm trying not to lose it.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
I was practicing at lunch, so maybe we could just go to page 2 of that, and I'll just refer to various pages and try not to do the whole thing. Okay, so
Yeah, don't worry about it. I was interjecting, so you have time, but you don't need to. You're the only speaker, by the way.
Okay, great.
There's no one. Okay.
Mr. Chair, there is another speaker on the OASC agent.
Tony is actually on. He's listening, so he's available if we need to pull him up. But
yeah.
Okay.
But there's no one in. Is there anyone in the room, Barb? You forgot to ask if anyone's in the room.
No, there's no one else for the last 2 items.
Okay. No more crowds. Okay.
Time me, guys. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
So looking at page, if we go to page 2, yep. Okay. So variances 1 to 3 pertain to the overall lot usage, as well as the house, and we are asking to exceed the allowance, but by what we consider to be fairly minor amounts, and it is our position that these are in keeping that they're interrelated minor variances that are in keeping with prior decisions from the committee, and that there's really nothing exceptional about these variances. So I did a bit of research to see what was available online to understand past decisions and what was happening in our neighborhood, and was able to obtain some examples that you would have seen through the other pages of the presentation, some which I'll reference in a minute. And we can see from those decisions other homes that were granted either the same or greater variances that pertain to lot coverage, gross floor area, and height, which are the 3 first variances that we are asking for. So for example, page 3 is 37 GORT Ave. And this is an excellent example of a property just up the street from us where they were granted greater lot coverage as well as floor space index to what we are actually asking for. Okay. I might skip down to pages 5, and you can scroll to 6 as well. There's another example there, but page 5, which was more to do with the gross floor area that I just kind of skipped over, just to be streamlined, I guess. But pages 5 and 6 are 2 properties which are to the side. So go up from that one. Yes. Okay, so these 2 properties, 17 GORT is to the side of us. It's a corner property as well. And the next page, I believe, down from that one is an Alcan property. Both of those, that's not that one, it must be above, I apologize. But both of these properties, you can pull them up on the map, on a street view map as well. But both of these properties demonstrate height variances where they are basically 3-story homes. And this just demonstrates that what we are requesting is very much in keeping with other homes that are in our area, that our home isn't going to be exceptional or stick out or be extreme sort of in its surroundings in any specific way. And all that information that I got was just through doing kind of online searches and seeing what the different heights were for the different floors and so on.
Okay, very good work.
I'm going to carry on for a quick little second.
I don't know if I can continue. Yeah, you want to continue going?
I do. I think I should really address probably something more important with the forestry portion.
Yeah, let's hear about the tree, because community planning has given you report 1 and 2 conditions to either permission to injure a tree, private and public, but they're looking for a denial, which they do often. So if you can explain.
Absolutely.
They want 1 and 5 refused. So if you can just discuss that briefly.
Absolutely. So since our initial application, we have employed tree doctors, we have an arborist report, and we have submitted our application to urban forestry and paid our fee. And I have actually had a chance to talk to, is it Max Dita, who submitted the letter from the tree protection. about their concerns. And what my understanding is that they were looking, I believe that they were looking at an old drawing. Before we did our revisions, the driveway coming out of the garage was basically a straight in and out. And in doing so, it involved us expanding the driveway further to the east, and in fact, taking over what is a city-owned area and has a lilac tree, which they refer to as tree 3, I believe. In our revision, we realized that that was not going to fly, and in our revisions, we altered it so that the driveway is staying exactly how it is as it comes off Alcan. So it's in its exact position. It doesn't infringe on that city planting area or the lilac bush, and what we will do is we will widen it. So Mac's memorandum came through on the 21st of August for the tree protection, where they said all the things you just said. And I contacted him on Friday and had a chance to speak to him about those objections. And I pointed out to him that we actually had altered so that was not going to be injured or damaged or changed or encroached or infringed upon in any way. And on the 28th of August, I actually emailed him again to just point out in the arborist report, you can see the updated drawings. There was, on the 20th of August, there was a tree protection drawing that was submitted as part of the application. And you can see on that, it shows the old driveway plan. And I believe that maybe he was referring to that old information as opposed to the new information. And it's my understanding, I know we will need to further communicate and work with him and make sure that they're satisfied, but it is our intentions to make sure that they are satisfied. And we understand that that might need to be a condition moving forward. I hope
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Lewis? Members? And if no such questions, is someone ready for a motion?
I do have a quick question.
Okay.
You're aware of the transportation conditions, correct? There are transportation conditions.
Are you talking about the Metrolinx?
No.
Or are you talking about, oh, I have that memorandum.
There are two
the curbs.
transportation conditions, including the owner must submit a revised site plan drawing to A, explicitly illustrate and dimension the redundant portions of the existing curb cut that will be removed, and 2, the owner must include the following notations on a revised site plan.
Yes, yes.
You're aware of those, right?
I am aware of those, yes.
Okay.
No objections.
Okay.
Happy to comply.
Okay, if there's no more questions, is someone ready for a motion?
I can take that on. I'm happy to make a motion for approval. I believe this application meets the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and move for approval subject to urban forestry conditions number 1 and number 2, and the transportation conditions as well.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Alderson. We have a seconder for that motion. Mr. Komarek, thank you. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. You have your approval, Ms. Lewis. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. Okay, we have one more application, which is item 24, 16 Highgate Road. Application to construct a 2-story rear addition, a 1-story front addition, and a 2nd-story south side addition. And there are 6 variances. We have planning is looking for a condition of approval to tie it to the side yard setbacks, transportation email advising us they have no objection, and a Metrolinx advisory, as well as we have the materials from the previous hearing, as this matter was originally heard on August the 3rd, 2023, and Urban Forestry is looking for condition number 2. The speaker is, for the last time today, Sunil Price. I think this is a hat trick for you.
Yeah.
Or more, 3 or 4 today.
I think this is 3 today, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
So I'll begin with my presentation just by outlining the changes that went through during the deferral period. I'll note that the plans that were sent in in the original application indicated that the patio was also a deck, and this is the reason it was included in the lot coverage calculation. This has been clarified, and as a result, the lot coverage is now proposed at 39% as seen on the public notice that's before you. I'll also note that the cantilevered addition had its setback increased from 0.7 meters to 0.8 meters. And then I'll also note that the parking space variance was removed that was originally on the August 3rd notice. To clarify, the public notice that is before you now is correct and it has all of the required variances. With regard to variance number 1, I'll note that this proposed lot coverage includes the ancillary structure and covered porches, which add up to 7.5 of the proposed lot coverage. The main dwelling itself only has 31% of the lot coverage accounted to it, which is well below the permitted amount at 33%. I'll also point out the proposal is compliant with all landscaping and soft landscaping requirements, which indicates that this proposal is not an overdevelopment of the lot. With regard to variance 2, this variance represents a difference of approximately 8 meters squared from a GFA that would be permitted as of right, and is also within the range of GFAs that have been previously approved along Highgate Road. Now, for variance 3, the front yard setback, this is a variance that is truly minor, representing a distance of only 8 centimeters or over just 3 inches from what is permitted as of right. I'll also point out that the portion of the dwelling that's projecting past the required front yard setback is only 1 story and does not protrude past the covered porch or the existing bay window. Now, with regard to variance 4, the minimum side yard setbacks will largely respect the existing setbacks on the lot and around the neighborhood. The currently existing north side setback is 0.66 meters, and the intent of this proposal is to extend the rear of the dwelling. But since the existing dwelling is not perfectly in line with the side lot line, the rear extension ends up 3 centimeters closer to the north side lot line. With respect to the south side lot line, the 0.8 meter relief requested is only required for a cantilevered second story addition. Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Did you have an interjection?
No, son.
Okay.
I was just going to say, so as a result, you're willing to agree to the community planning condition to tie you to those setbacks, given that you're explaining it's not for the whole lot, right? So we don't have to cover that. Sorry for interrupting, but I assume you're okay with that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the condition from community planning is appropriate.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Go ahead.
And
you can wrap up soon, I guess.
Absolutely. I'll wrap up just by saying variance 5, like variance 4, pertains to the side yard setbacks. I think the same justification applies, but I'll note that this variance is only triggered due to a site-specific exception from Chapter 900 that regulates additions to buildings. If this was a new building, the variance would not be triggered. And lastly, I'll briefly touch on variance 6. The encroachment of the eaves into the south side setback is only relevant for the second story cantilevered addition, and the eaves on the north side will be generally in line with the existing eaves on the subject property with the amendment of the alignment issue I mentioned briefly. Overall, it's my opinion that this application meets the 4 prescribed tests in the Planning Act.
Okay, thank you, sir. Members, any questions for Mr. Milne-Price? And I note there's nothing from planning, no neighbors, no one objecting to anything here. Okay, someone ready for a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm satisfied the variances meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. And I move approval subject to urban forestry condition 2 and the community planning conditions.
Okay, thank you. Seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion.
I think it's just a singular community planning condition, but you said conditions. There's one condition.
Okay. There's two.
We're splitting hairs here, but anyway, there's one condition.
Both side yards.
I'm happy to second that motion.
All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Application has been approved, and motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, seconded by Ms. McCluskey, and we're standing adjourned at 4:43 p.m. Have a wonderful, safe, long weekend, everyone.
Have a good long weekend, everyone. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Elizabeth.